If at first you don't succeed, try again. Gosh darn it. I do not believe this is going to work. We've got the delay again. Ugh. Does it look okay? Well, if this is terrible, let me know and I'll can it. We're just having troubles today. We're having troubles on the live stream. It's internet related. Can't get an upload speed. We've cleared the router. You don't care. All right. So I'm going to go and I got to find your guys' chat. Here we are. Live chat. Let's go. Sorry about this. Absolutely ridiculous. But it's just how things go, right? Where are my messages? Well, I may not be able to look at messages here. Sorry about this, folks. Okay, clear this off. You know what? I'm just going to go. I can't figure this out. All right. So we had the crazy weekend and everybody kind of knows where we sit or where we don't sit. Just so many different things have kind of come and gone, and a whole bunch of different stories that are out there. And some of them are true. Some of them are not true. And we're being taken in different directions. And it's like, so I just wanted to talk with you guys kind of about where we sit, what's going on, what's happening. It's some kind of feedback over here as well. Kill the audio there. Yeah, so I'm just trying to get in the game here, trying to get in this live stream. So one of the things to me, the whole issue with kind of what I was thinking was, how does a shooter get within that distance of the former president and potentially the future president without Secret Service, without local police, without state police, without any police? And the video I was going to show, it's a really good CNN video, and they show former president talking, and then they show people literally saying, there's a guy up on the roof with the gun. So how did that guy get up there? And he's bear crawling with this gun, right? And it's a rifle. It's an assault style rifle. It's an AR-15, I think. It was a 5.56, if I'm saying that correctly. My gun knowledge isn't great. I mean, it was a rifle that he was carrying up there. And it was a minute and 57 after somebody said, hey, there's a gun up there, between when the actual shooting started to happen. And one of my thoughts when I was kind of doing this research was, I wonder what in the sequence of shots that were taken on the president, I wonder which one clipped him in the ear. Do we know? I mean, there's going to be, quick retorts. You can hear that gunfire. But will we know? I mean, which shots killed the volunteer firefighter? That was super sad. He was 50 years old. And then 2 other people got injured. So I saw this happen. Somebody sent me a text saying, hey, this is going on. So I got on, a Saturday. I was at home. I was looking at, all the footage, and I called my dad. So I kind of watched through so much of this with my dad. That was pretty cool to be able to do. But it was like, how did the guy get that close? I mean, it's 150 yards, something like that. I mean, it's not a crazy long shot. The distance of this shot that clipped him in the ear, because he turned his head because he was looking at an immigration numbers slide. It just, doop, and that saves him. Just boom, right into the top of the ear, right? I mean, just nuts. How does this happen? I mean, how does this lack of security in real time, how's that go? So a minute 57 and somebody says, "Hey, there's a guy up there." And people are like, what's going on? And they're literally shooting footage of the guy doing the bear crawl on the roof. I'm sure you've seen that. That to me is mind boggling. Like, how does that happen? And it's my understanding that the distance, 150 yards, 400 feet away, something like that. That's not a crazy long shot. I mean, that's the distance at which what I think the Army trains at. You got to be proficient at, shooting somebody at that distance. So with the scope and with the size of this gun, it's not a huge gun. I mean, it's bigger than a 22 and it's smaller than a 30-06 shell, right? It's couple inches long. The head isn't too big, but I'm giving you just rough numbers on the whole gun thing. So the guy carries it up there and cranks off a few rounds, and then he clearly gets killed by Secret Service. But just this whole notion of this happening, and you're like, what's the deal? So we're gonna peruse a bunch of these topics, and let's get going here. Yeah, there we go. All right, so that's the CNN video. CNN investigation breaks down how assassination attempt unfolded minute by minute. We're not going to watch that, but the deal on that is that they had kind of a side-by-side comparison in real time. All right, here's Trump speaking, and here's these people watching the shooter. And you're like, okay, yeah, clearly there is nobody looking out for the shooter. There was one police officer that I got up to the roof, and then the shooter turned around and pointed the gun at him. And then that police officer went down. He didn't want to get shot, something along those lines. I had read that somebody fell off the roof. A cop had fallen off the roof, sprained his ankle. Yeah, how about the still looking for a shoe? Apparently when the Secret Service, when Trump got shot in the ear, when he went down, the Secret Service hit him so hard that he knocked him out of his shoes, like literally knocked him out of his shoes. His hat comes off. I mean, just crazy. And then I think one of the, that iconic moment where he puts his fist up in the air and does this number, he's got blood running down his face. Clearly somebody has, I guess it is, so it's this side of his face because it's this ear. I think they wiped his face, or he wiped his face. Somebody wiped his face because you could see there was still blood on a portion of his face, but it was cleared kind of away from his ear. That was just wild because you're like, okay, so all right, he didn't take a shot to the face, but he took a shot to the ear. And everybody's wigged out. Somebody just had their head blown open right behind him. I mean, just a nutty event. When I was watching and talking with my dad, who's in Oklahoma City, but communication now, you're just like, oh, Dad, you got to watch this. We were commenting on, there were a couple of people on the right-hand side of the stage that got taken off as well. I thought they had been shot too, but the people were standing behind and up to the upper left that were killed and injured, it's my understanding. So you've got so many holes in all of this going on. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not a conspiracy guy, but, and everything that comes after the but is true. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, you might say, well, what about the DEI hires? And somebody on one of my last failed live streams said, this is the one time you want that transsexual, bodyguard in there, the woman transsexual, because they're going to be bigger than the normal women. And this is the only time in kind of this diversity, equity, inclusion world where this would actually make sense, because biological females are smaller than biological males. So, less body mass, less strength. Some of the folks are saying, they're really coming down hard on the Secret Service. You got Secret Service agents in there who just don't know what they're inexperienced. They're diversity hires, all kinds of stuff like that. Well, let's go through Secret Service blames local police, says they were tasked with securing property surrounding Trump's Pennsylvania rally. Okay, isn't it their job to secure the whole thing? I mean, aren't they, you know, I know they work with local authorities. I don't really know how all that, you know, goes together. And apparently they don't either, because the whole thing has just been such a mismatch. And the shooter, let's talk about the shooter for a second. The kid's 20 years old. He was a registered Republican. He had donated, I think, $15 to a Democrat cause. He had a bunch of patriotic shirts that he would wear. He would sit in the school cafeteria by himself. He's a loner. He would wear hunting clothes to school. Okay, all right. But, you know, it was Trump just not hardcore enough for him? Or did he succumb to some kind of Antifa deal? You know, the Antifa kids, they're always loners. They're always on the fringe, you know? And it didn't seem like much of my initial thought was just, you know, do a roto-rooter on that guy's social media and let's see what his social media pops up. They cracked his phone. The FBI cracked his phone. And they really didn't come up with much so far, at least that's what they're telling us. So Secret Service blamed local police for failing to secure the rooftop from which gunman Thomas Matthew Crooks attempted to assassinate former President Trump, insisting it was outside the perimeter the federal agency was tasked with protecting. But isn't it their job to know where the threat, you know, at what level? Hey, can a guy shoot from 400 feet away with the scope, with the decent sized rifle and hit the president, former president and future president? Yes. Well, then secure that. But they weren't tasked with protecting that. Instead, securing and patrolling the factory grounds of AGR International, located about 130 yards from the stage where Trump was speaking Saturday, was the responsibility of local Pennsylvania police. The blame game. It's their fault. It's their fault. Secret Service Representative Anthony Gugliemi said, but then I read another article this morning saying, we work with our local law enforcement. We're not blaming local law enforcement. We're all trying to work together here. And every single time you turn around, you feel like you're just looking at some misinformation. Yeah, that was one of my thoughts at the beginning of this live stream, where we had to start the damn live stream twice, is somebody jacking with my stream? Is that happening? I don't think so. I think it was just internet. We're not sure. We've never had that happen, though, either. So I don't know. Weird, right? The Secret Service was only tasked with covering the grounds where Trump's rally took place, with local police being recruited to assist with those efforts and secure the area outside the rally. Okay, but theoretically, if a dude climbs up on a roof, and this is a 20-year-old kid, it's not like this is a 38-year-old former Marine or a sniper or something like that, right? This is just a kid who was able to do this. That's my point, right? Not exactly a real athletic-looking kid, but he got up there, and when you clip somebody in the ear, oh my word. I mean, that is basically just a straight on dome shot, isn't it? And unfortunately, here's a photo of that young man with his head. They said he split his head open. Doesn't surprise me. I mean, and this is after several minutes, and Secret Service, oh, hey now, what's going on? They take the shooter out, and so many people on the ground were yelling, "He's got a gun! He's got a gun!" And police were alerted, and yet there's this complete lack of consistency as far as providing protection. I mean, some of the arguments I've seen and I've heard are, well, if it's not going to be a lockdown event, it's really hard to secure a venue like that. And I kind of thought, yeah, but you got to have better security than what this kid was able to evade. Did anybody even talk to him? Did anybody confront him? Because the police were taking pictures of him on the ground saying, that's a suspicious looking dude. They were literally tracking him. And then somehow he takes a ladder and climbs up on top of the roof, and then he's bear crawling with a rifle like he's seen, Rambo do 100 times. I don't know. The whole thing to me is just like, what is going on? But neighbors living near Butte Farm showgrounds told the Post that they were never visited by any law enforcement agencies, local or federal, in the days before or during the rally. Okay, all right, but is that normally what they do? I don't even know, right? Do they check everybody out? Do they assess the scenario? To me, wouldn't you check, within a gunshot range distance? I mean, we've had enough of these, right? You had John F. Kennedy Jr., Robert Kennedy. I mean, I remember being in third grade. Was it third grade or sixth grade? I can't remember. 1981, right? When Reagan, the assassination attempt on Reagan and Brady just got rocked. I remember that being a pretty scary deal. And so you would think that over these years, I mean, you watch that footage on Kennedy. I've been to the deal in Dallas and, the grassy knoll, and been up to the room where he apparently shot his gun from. None of it really makes any sense. It's like, this is what you're telling us. But you're telling us some kid got up on the roof and took the shot. All right. So that's kind of what really happened there. I mean, you got a major breakdown. So FBI is doing a big investigation, right? Somebody's going to get fired. Heads are going to roll. We know that to be true. But, it's my understanding this weekend, Obama was supposed to have a little sit down, and maybe with Nancy Pelosi, have a little sit down one-on-one with, Sleepy Joe, and say, hey, Sleepy Joe, we appreciate your 900 years of service and Democratic federal government for us, but it's time to go. You got to go, Joe. Then, when that was supposed to be happening, and they're figuring out that game plan, and I'm sure they've got a game plan. I don't know what it might be. But Trump takes one to the ear. I mean, the fact that, and this is what my dad and I kind of focused on, was it was like maybe a 15-degree turn of the head. It was just one of these, and it was just boop, ear. I mean, that could have so easily been his forehead, or just boom, head. And this would be a wildly, wildly different live stream, right? Some of the, and I'm just going to go through what comes to my head. Somebody said, well, the next day he was out playing golf. He's so fearsome that he was just out. That wasn't true. Also, Trump was scheduled for a UFC event that night in Denver. I think it was the UFC event in Denver. He did not go to that. But what a walkout that would have been. His ear is all just bandaged up. He walks out, maybe to Eye of the Tiger or something again. That would have been just wild. His raising of his arm. Let's talk about that for a second. I mean, he basically stood up, and the Secret Service was just trying to figure out what to do. The one Secret Service woman couldn't get her gun holstered back in. I mean, they just got their world rocked. A couple of those guys just jumped on him. I mean, physically jumped on him, as they're supposed to do, apparently. And, so they take the bullet for him. So there were some good things there, and there were some really bad things. All the good things kind of happened after the event, after the shooter had been, basically demobilized. He had his head blown off, right? I mean, and that's where our security is. Nobody contacted me. Nobody came. I was kind of thinking that as close as my house is, that honestly thought this might be part of a command station at some point. What runs through your head, and what a lot of Democrats have said, is it's too bad they missed. I mean, this is supposed to be the party of passion for the fellow human being, right? I mean, that kind of stuff to me is just, And then you had some really just disingenuous comments by a lot of the Democrats, because they are just sitting back going, I can't believe he was shot in the ear. He's going to run around with a bandage. And that is basically just, people are going to be just in love with this whole notion of there's a leader. There is a leader. I don't care what you say about Trump, but a dude gets up after getting shot in the ear and does that. That's kind of a show of strength. Maybe just, when he started almost crying at the Republican convention, my thought was, this guy's got a bunch of trauma going on. He's got some, you get shot in the air, you're going to have some emotions. And he was holding back some pretty mighty emotions. But I had conversation with one of my former videographers yesterday, and we were talking through this whole event. And he is not a Trump fan. And I'm a Trump guy from the standpoint, I've watched him as real estate. I'm a residential real estate guy, and Trump's been a commercial real estate guy. Not a lot of guys on the West Coast that have done what Trump has done business-wise on the East Coast. So I grew up following Trump's career, because if you're going to watch a commercial guy, he's put together some of the biggest developments and packages that, on a private basis without a ton of funding have been put together, on the private side. So the kid that worked for me, videographer, his whole point was, when Trump stood up and raised his arm, blood coming down his face, his thought was, that's a leader there. That's a leader coming from a position of strength. And I think all of the Democrats are going to look at this and go, yeah, let's see, we got Sleepy Joe, who can barely get off the stage. He can literally barely get off a one-step stage with his wife, Jill. And Trump is just running around, taking bullets to the ear, being escorted off. And then they gave him the option, it's my understanding, hey, do you want to back off on the Republican National Convention? Do you want to delay that just a scooch? He's like, no, it's game time. Let's go. Because he wants to take advantage of the run that he is going to get from this. How about, this article kind of just goes into, hey, nobody really checked out what was going on. I'm just going to go through the articles I've got up. Yeah, Democrats fret about the political fallout from the Trump rally shooting. The presidential contest ended last night, said a veteran Democratic consultant. That was one of my initial thoughts, and I posted the photo of Trump, fist in the air, and I said, something to the effect of, that's a landslide in 2024. If Republicans aren't able to capitalize on this, I don't know what is going to work. You know what I mean? You've got one president who's taking bullets, and the other president can barely speak, can barely get together a coherent sentence, even when he's really trying. He just says a bunch of stuff. And, how about President, he called Kamala Harris President Trump. All right, we all make mistakes, but he makes a lot of them. He is not cognitively there. But Trump did nothing but, I think, show strength throughout this event. And when he stood up, I was kind of thinking he should probably be down after this, because we didn't know how many shooters there were. We didn't know anything about this scenario, right? You're like, what is going on? There's people just dropping like flies in the background. People are dropping down to the ground. It's just all this confusion, this pandemonium. Trump standing up, his face is bleeding. We don't really know what happened. So here's another article that I thought was interesting. BlackRock yanks a 2022 ad featuring Trump shooter Thomas Matthew Crooks. Well, he was an unpaid actor. He's just a kid. They're going through his school, but he ended up on an ad. Interesting, right? This kid has almost no social media, right? I was saying early on, get into that kid's TikTok, because that's where he's learning whatever he's learning. He didn't have much, or at least that's what they're saying. He didn't have much. So was he working alone? Was he a lone wolf? They're calling the term. It appears so. We have no other links so far. But again, that goes to kind of my just sheer concern, which is you had a lone wolf kid with zero experience outwit local police, state police, Secret Service. This guy at 20 years old, I don't know about you, but at 20 years old, I mean, you just don't have the cognitive ability to put together all this kind of stuff. It's not well planned out. At 20, you're just kind of doing stuff, right? Well, it's what they tell me to do. I'll go off to college, I'll work real hard, I'll support this person. Yeah, I think this politically. I don't really know. That's what my parents are telling me is what I'm going to do. I hate that about what my parents are telling me. Therefore, I'm going to go do this. You just make a bunch of choices that are really poor, right? It's called life experience. And then you learn from it. And then you look back in your 30s and go, good Lord, lucky I survived that. And same thing with your 40s and 50s. But as a mid 50-year-old man, I'm looking at this going, this was a real lapse of security or something. Or was this planned? Because let's be honest, I think it's gotten to the point Trump's been ahead in the polls. He absolutely destroyed Biden in that debate. I mean, he just took him to town. I mean, that was an absolute spanking. It just was. To the point where I think Trump pulled up short. And the only really mean thing he said was, I don't know what he said at the end of that sentence, but I don't think he did either. He was just basically pointing out the absolute obvious that the rest of us saw, that the rest of the world saw. And Democrats know they need to do something. They can't keep that guy going. I mean, that's just a no-go. Even if Sleepy Joe wants to move forward, even if Joe Biden is, he's the man for the job. Well, okay. Then the big question becomes, well, who runs? Kamala Harris? I mean, good luck there. You know, Gruesome Newsom? And then there's a bunch of other options. And you're like, I don't think anybody at this point in time, given where Trump stands in the polls, is gonna do much damage. How about Biden last week talking about putting Trump in the bullseye? I know there's a lot of talk about that, a lot of crazy talk about that. I think it's just something he said offhand. Not trying to make, he's not literally talking about killing him, but there's so many instances of, people literally talking about, I wish the shooter hadn't missed. And these are Democrats. So this is the party that's supposed to be all about compassion and, looking out for your fellow human being and not racist and not, the laundry list goes on a mile long. Going back to the Secret Service, did they have a bunch of, DEI hires that went sideways on them? We're going to find out, right? We're going to find out. In my mind, when I look at, governmental authority or governmental security, I remember back in the day, and this is Sean Old Man. I remember back in the day in the 1970s, all the Secret Service guys were big, tall, well-built, muscular, kind of like they look like they could handle business, right? That's what I always remember. The sunglasses, they looked good in a suit. They walked around. Everything was in order. Everything was dialed in. Everything was particular. And I'm not saying that it's not that way now. It's not that way now at all, right? Because you've got this whole diversity thing. You got this whole diversity thing where, just throw a bunch of them in there. This is the kind of job you can have anybody work as a, Secret Service officer. No, you can't. You need some big, tall, strong dudes to handle threats like this. I'm sorry. It's a physical thing. It's a physical thing. A lot of jobs don't require that. This is one security does. Let's be honest. Men are stronger than women. So this is the one time where, okay, you got a transsexual woman. Okay, she identifies as a woman, but she's 6'4", 225 pounds with body fat of 9.9. All right, yeah, let's put her in there. It's a good job for her. Because, strength is needed. You don't want a small somebody who's overweight, not able to physically move in that moment, do you? You just don't. You just don't. It doesn't matter what race they are. Nobody cares about that. But big and strong and able to fend off whatever, yeah, that's what you want. So this whole notion of Secret Service being into the diversity hires, Yeah, that's gonna get looked at. How about Trump's vice president pick? JD Vance. Have you read the book Hillbilly Elegy? I read it a couple of years ago. It was really interesting. His perspective was super interesting. Trump's vice president pick wrote a best-selling memoir. Rereading it now is astonishing because he kind of crapped on a lot of the stuff that he is signing up for right now. It's really wild. It's really interesting to see kind of him change. I was not expecting him. I was expecting Vivek Ramaswamy. That's who I kind of thought he'd go with. So I was 100% wrong there. Does he pick up kind of more does Trump pick up some of the blue collar angle? Even though JD Vance went to, was it Yale? I think he went to Yale. Yeah, not exactly blue collar, but he grew up in an environment that was not advantageous. Didn't live with his parents most of the time. He's just, shuffling around from house to house in Appalachia. I mean, just not a stellar upbringing, but an upbringing I think that a lot of people have. And then maybe, hey, here's an angle that Trump can work. At this point in time, I think Trump just needs to hunker down and let things kind of sort themselves out and not say anything just wildly outrageous. That's where I think we sit. That's where he needs to just not say something that's going to, put his foot in his mouth, which he is very, he loves to talk. He loves to talk. And so the vice president pick, JD Vance. That is an interesting one, and we'll just have to see how that goes. I was not expecting that yesterday. It was like, oh, hey now. I mean, I know that name had been bandied about, but it was really interesting to see that deal. Democratic staffer axed after saying Trump gunman should have taken shooting lessons so you don't miss next time. This coming from the Democratic Party. I mean, I get what they're saying. They just want Trump out of there because they believe they don't have anybody that can win. I get that. All right. But then when you self-proclaim that you're the virtue signaling, you are the one that cares about humanity, and then you're talking about you wish the former president had his head blown off. It's kind of really shows true colors. Because could you imagine? How about at the beginning? I don't know how many of you guys watched at the beginning of the media coverage. They were saying loud bangs, loud pops. They weren't even going with gunshots. That's what the first, I think, 15 minutes of the coverage that I saw. I don't really know when I came into it, but it was pretty early on. It was interesting to see that they were reporting it as loud pops. And then, when Trump did the thing with his ear, you're like, okay, if that is a gunshot, then he almost was taken out. He was almost assassinated. Are we watching an assassination here? You couldn't really tell from any of the major news stories. I think Fox was already on it. They were saying an assassination attempt early on, but it was one of those in real time. What's going on? What is happening? So you've got, and then you've got Jack Black and his little band. His bandmate was doing a birthday thing. It was his birthday, and they asked him what he wished for. Is that the gunman didn't miss. I mean, that's true colors right there. That is true colors. You can say all you want about the far right, but they're not talking about, murdering the current president. Sorry you missed. Nobody's saying that, but the Democrats are. And so I think there's a lot of that. And then the really disingenuous remarks from most of the mainstream political figures, in no way, they're almost working that whole, let's take away all the guns type deal again. And whenever that happens, whenever we have a shooting like this, it's gun violence, it's gun violence, it's gun violence. It's not some nutty kid that at age 20 had this weird thought that, hey, this is my lot in life. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to climb up on that building and I'm going to take a pot shot at the president from 400 feet away. I mean, something goes wrong in your head where you think that is a rational decision, even at age 20. Had the argument with close friends saying, well, what if you thought we could get away with it? I'm like, even when we're 20, I think we have the cognitive understanding that if you shoot at a president, they're probably not going to take you alive, right? Even though that would have provided us with more information. But then you got this guy up on the roof looking down and shooting at people. You got to take that threat out, right? Just boom, got to take him out. He's done. He's absolutely gone. So you've got a whole bunch of stories like this. A staffer for a Democratic congressman from Mississippi was fired for her inflammatory comments that she hoped the shooter who targeted Donald Trump wouldn't miss next time. That's the kind of stuff that I look at and I'm like, really? Really? This is what you think and this is what you said out loud. Number one, it's wildly inappropriate to talk about another human being being murdered, but a political figure like that, I mean, when you say that, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. I mean, it's just a stupid comment, right? I don't condone violence other than hoping it wouldn't miss next time. So I don't condone violence. Well, yeah, but that's not what you said. You're an idiot. Violence, but please get you some shooting lessons so you don't miss next time. Oops, that wasn't me talking. And that was on Facebook. I mean, what an idiot. But that is what I think they actually think. Good Lord. I know a lot of Democrats who are probably secretly thinking, gosh darn it. Sure wish he didn't miss, because there's no way that Biden's going to be able to beat him now. There's just not. Trump showed strength. Biden can barely get off the stage. He can barely walk up steps to Air Force One without falling over, tripping over, and just pulling that. Elon Musk calls for resignations of Secret Service brass, says he now endorses Trump. You've got people jumping all in. And you know what? That was another thing that the media, after that debate, the media basically just bailed on Biden. I think they want to be, they want to be with the winner. And it's very clearly becoming a deal where, it is more apparent that Trump might win than Biden. There's, how it used to be, okay, they're fairly close in the polls. But now you've got events like this, and you've got people that are maybe on they don't really know, the independents who aren't quite sure who they want to have as leader of the free world. But after this event, if you compare that to anything that Biden has done in the last 6 months, it's game over. There is just no way to justify that other than what we're seeing here, which is these people hate Trump so much and hate his leadership and his leadership style so much and hate the Republicans so much that they're willing to hope that somebody gets murdered. That's just where they sit. That's where they sit. So not all of them, but enough of them that there's these kind of news stories out there left, right, and center, right? So you got Elon Musk calling for resignations of Secret Service brass. Some Secret Service heads are going to roll. Some cops are going to roll. It's this kind of event. I mean, Trump is lucky to be alive. He just is. I mean, you could not script this Hollywood style. You could not enact this in 100 takes. You couldn't get this whole level of just chaos and different storylines going on. You couldn't do that and have it come out as one, rolling thing without some massive edits. And that to me, I'm kind of like, okay, you've got failures all along the line in security there. There's, not just Secret Service, cops, there's just, and maybe it's because, and I don't want to go down the conspiracy, But is some of this planned? Hey, if we let something go, there's a little opportunity there. Somebody takes a shot at him. It makes you wonder those kind of things. Like, was this planned? Was this a planned event that somebody's trying to take out Trump because they don't want him in power? The establishment certainly, excuse me, the establishment certainly doesn't want to see Trump. They can't stand the thought of 4 more years. They really can't. And the rest of us who, I thought the 4 years under Trump were some of my best in business. They just were. Numbers wise, they just were. Even going into the pandemic, we were doing okay. And then, the transitory inflation has just torn real estate apart. So I'm kind of looking at Trump going, all right, he's probably the guy that's going to win. And this is going to be certainly a better role than what we had with Biden, because everything with Biden has just been such a debacle. Democratic lawmaker chid sympathy for the devil after Trump shot at rally. He's basically saying, we shouldn't be having sympathy for the devil, calling Trump the devil. All right, but the guy just took a shot to the ear. So, you're a little bit tone deaf here. This isn't really going to work out well for you. But this is what they think. They think that the devil should have been shot. They think the devil should have been killed. And making comments like this, I'm not really saying he's no, you are saying he's the devil, and you wish he was dead. Just like the gal from Mississippi. They want him dead. And that's what makes you think, okay, the 20-year-old kid, all that stuff. Really? Yeah. And then I don't believe any of the reports coming out. I mean, I just don't. I take everything with a grain of salt. So next article is the right is blaming women and DEI for Secret Service's failure in Trump shooting. All right. I mean, DEI, yeah, I blame that for a lot of hires that shouldn't have ever happened because it stands for didn't earn it. Quite simply, right? That's just what it stands for. In real words, it stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. But when you've got a job that dictates a different skill set than DEI, and that job set, gets overrun by this whole notion of we need to be diverse and equitable, we need to have great inclusion, then jobs suffer. And did the Secret Service suffer? Yeah. Something happened. Something went wildly sideways here, right? Somewhere, somehow. So the right's going to blame women and DEI. Okay. All right. Lawmakers and right-wing talking heads have been quick to blame female Secret Service agents for failing to protect Trump. I know this woman's taking a lot of heat because she's a little bit bigger than some would like to see on the weight scale. It's hard to say, but the whole thing is just a debacle. Yeah, no way it's an accident, intentional negligence. Absolutely. There's something here that it just doesn't smell right? As conspiracies and threats of violence flooded online spaces in the hours after former President Donald Trump was shot during a rally in Pennsylvania, one narrative emerged from the right. Women and DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, are to blame. Well, DEI is to blame for a lot of failure in a lot of different business models. It just is. You are no longer elevating the best person for the job. You don't have the best person doing that job because somebody else took their job because of, whatever it is that checks the box. Oh yeah, it's going to be great. We're going to have such a diverse crowd here working at this company. And then you realize, oh yeah, but that doesn't necessarily make the company better. It just makes everybody feel good about being diverse and equitable and including everyone. You got a lot of companies that are just absolutely, canning their DEI programs. Tractor Supply, most recent example. I mean, when you are selling stuff to hobby farmers and, farmers in general, and you try and go down the DEI route, that's not going to work out. The farming community is not exactly a bunch of blue-hairs with the septum piercing tatted up, right? More conservative. So you've got a lot of companies that are kind of realizing, oh, yeah, maybe this isn't such a good look. The sexist claims are based on deceptively edited videos and images being shared online by right-wing pundits, influencers, and trolls that have critiqued a number of female Secret Service agents who were part of Trump's close protection detail on Saturday. Who was supposed to be looking out for a shooter on a roof? Where was that guy or gal? That's who I'm kind of wondering about. And the ones that were close and near to him that knocked his shoes off. Okay, I mean, we'll get a rundown on all that, right? We'll get a rundown on all that. The most common complaints against the agents include the fact that they were, according to posters online, too small, overweight, and in one case, incapable of handling their guns. We did see some of that. So, I mean, it's not untrue. But, you know, Kennedy had his head blown open, right? I mean, so, yeah, these instances of assassinations. This female agent couldn't even holster her gun today during the attempted assassination of Trump. DEI hire, quote, they're going to jump on this. Democrats are going to jump on gun violence. We need to restrict gun violence. And whenever I think of the whole, we need to restrict gun violence, I always think of Chicago and all the shootings that are happening there with some pretty good restrictions on guns and how the vast majority of the shootings aren't happening with legally obtained guns. And the kid borrowed this gun from his dad. His dad is probably the shooter kid. His dad is probably just, the dad has about 20 guns that are legally obtained. He bought them. He purchased them. And the kid went out and bought a box of, I think, 50 rounds. Is that right? Of 5.56 shells. And I mean, the whole thing is just wildly tragic. But there's no way that this just kind of happened. I have a hard time. All the things that had to take place to make this shooting attempt, to make this assassination attempt, they couldn't just happen. Was it because of the DEI hires? That probably didn't help. But can we pinpoint that to this? Probably not. But there's failure in there somewhere, and we need to figure out what it is. But you know what? We never will. Because, you know, we still got the laptop from hell out there with all kinds of evidence of crazy stuff going on. But where's that sit? Speaking of that, speaking of court cases, how about Trump gets his document case dismissed because the judge says that the appointment of Smith, the special investigator, was basically unconstitutional. It was illegal by Attorney General Merrick Garland. This isn't going to fly, and just tosses his case out. And that happened yesterday. I mean, Trump has just had a roll of things kind of going his direction. He has outlasted so much of this stuff. Tried to impeach him a couple of times, you know, tried to bankrupt him multiple times, try to throw him in jail, try to kill him. I mean, if he can just stay alive, he could be the next president. And I think he probably will be with the way things are going right now, barring some kind of other unforeseen incident like this that just, we're not really sure. It just kind of happened. It's, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And mainstream media is just jumping on, well, Secret Service is blaming local police. Local police are pointing the finger here. Politicians are, pointing the finger over here. And it's just all this, this big mess. And you're like, yeah, but there were some basic breakdowns that happened here that allowed this to happen, right? I mean, that's what we kind of need to focus on and then go, okay, so how about the shooter's motivation? What's he motivated by? He wears hunting clothes to school. Not a good look for a 20-year-old. You know what I mean? I mean, even in communities where hunting is a big thing, oftentimes you don't run around in camo, right? maybe some kids do, and this kid did, but he seemed like he was more of a loner. Did he get mixed up with somebody, feeding him a bunch of information? We don't even know what the information was that he was kind of going off of, the idea, because in his mind, he had to think, here's the end game for taking a shot at Donald Trump. Here's the end game. He had to have some kind of motivation. Man, I don't know what that is. I'm going to get killed. I'm going to get taken out. I mean, nobody ever thinks that. I'm going to become a martyr? Maybe somebody put him up to it. It doesn't seem so far. I mean, it seems like he's a lone wolf-ish, but then again, we don't really know, right? We just don't really know what this looks like. So whole thing to me, it has so many holes in it, so many just, aside from the reactions from people are going to have reactions, and they're just going to be, they're going to have some stupid things to say. And then anytime anything with gun violence comes up, the left wants to take away everybody's guns. Yeah, I don't think so, guys. That's just not happening. And that's not the real cause of this. This was a legal gun, that the kid took from his dad. And I'm sure the dad's going, oh my gosh. And the parents are like, what in the world happened? Because this kind of came out of left field, right? It's just like, what? What happened? This kid is what? And he just looks like a gangly white kid that, is a nerd. I mean, for lack of a better, you don't want to say something ill about the dead, but that's what he appeared to be. And so this whole notion that a kid like this could get that close within just a quick head turn of boop, taking out, former president and possibly future president is just, to me, is absolutely shocking. See, let's wrap up with this one. New details emerge in Trump assassination attempt investigation. The FBI said it was investigating the shooting as potential domestic terrorism. You mean kind of like Black Lives Matter? Yeah, because that was actual domestic terrorism on a large scale across the United States. And people donated, 100-something million? Yeah. After conducting more than 100 interviews, searching the suspect's home and vehicle and cracking into his cell phone, FBI investigators were still searching on Tuesday for the motive that led a 20-year-old Pennsylvania man to attempt to assassinate a former president. As that investigation continued, officials with the FBI and Department of Homeland Security warned late Monday about the potential for follow-on or retaliatory acts. You know what? I talked about this last week. I talked about the fact that the FBI had been warning about domestic terrorism, about something like this going on. There have been a number of alerts from the FBI saying that they think something is going to happen. They weren't sure what. Does this count as one of those? It doesn't look like this was an organized group that committed this act, but this event happened, right? So, this thing just didn't roll out and, we missed that angle of the security. We missed that portion. We should have had somebody there. Yeah, this person didn't communicate with this person. I think you had a ton of that. And then did you have some planning on top of it? Man, I don't know. Are we ever going to know? Are we ever going to know about, JFK? Are we ever going to know really what happened there? Because the explanation they gave us, I'm just not buying it. We cannot rule out the possibility that some domestic violence, what's the DVE stand for again? I don't know. Or other actors may attempt follow-on or retaliatory acts of violence in response to this assassination attempt, saying people are going to get the idea. And that's something that I thought of initially was, oh, yeah, there's going to be copycat, shooters that are going to take this event and run with it and go, oh, yeah, it's going to be the greatest day of my life. It's going to be the last day of my life, but greatest day of my life. I'm going to go down in history as the one, John Wilkes Booth, right? Cell phone used by the alleged assailant, Thomas Matthew Crooks, was sent to Quantico and they cracked it. Investigators did not immediately say if the analysis of the phone being conducted at the FBI laboratory yielded any clues on what drove the suspect to commit such a brazen attempt on Trump's life. It was just so wildly out in the open. I mean, literally out in the open, crawling up a ladder, hopping on a roof, doing the bear crawl with his rifle. I mean, how much more blatant do you need to be with people down on the ground, yet literally yelling, "He's got a gun! He's got a gun!" And law enforcement's looking around going, oh, and Secret Service is doing God knows what, where. That's not within our contained parameters. We can't be over there. That's not what we're responsible for, even though it's not much of a shot, at the president. But investigators were expected to begin an analysis of the device's contents as they focused on search for a motive for the shooting. They left one rally-goer dead and 2 others wounded. We haven't heard much about the other 2, have we? And I thought more people than that got shot when I was watching it initially with my dad. But maybe they just got injured and the whole people hitting the deck and that kind of thing. So over the last several months, Crooks received several packages, including some marked as possibly containing hazardous material. He did have a detonator with him, though, right? So maybe he'd put together a bomb somewhere, somehow, and this was how he was going to go out. Maybe he was going to blow himself up. Who knows, right? You just don't know because, he lost his life after he took a shot at the former president, and rightfully so. That is what happens when you take a shot at somebody who's got Secret Service protecting them, or kind of protecting them in this case, right? You don't want to throw the Secret Service under the bus, but then again, whose lapse in error was this? And the bulletin revealed that on the day of the shooting, Crooks purchased 50 rounds of ammunition prior to going to the rally in a gun shop in Bethel Park. It's unclear what shop the bulletin was referring to. ABC News learned on the day of the shooting, Crooks told his father he wanted to go to a shooting range and asked if he could borrow his dad's AR-15 style rifle, said a source familiar with the matter. Since the father had occasionally allowed Crooks to go target shooting with the semi-automatic firearm, he didn't think anything was suspicious when he let him use the rifle again on Saturday. Just didn't think much of it. He's like, kid's going to go to the shooting range. Good for him. All right. Be able to shoot those varmints out in the ranch, or whatever it is that this family had. I don't even know, right? Investigators said Crooks used the rifle in the attempted assassination of Trump. Yep. Law enforcement have also been canvassing local gun shops in the Pittsburgh area for any information they could glean about Crooks' ammunition buying habits. He didn't have any. All the guns were his dad's. And he just, he was going to do some shooting, and at least that's what he told Dad. And then he went and he did this. I mean, there's got to be more. There is more to this story, I guess, is what I'm going to leave you with. Because this just doesn't happen like this. This isn't just a random series of events. They might end up together random, but there's something going on here that just doesn't pass the sniff test, right? Will we find out? Who knows? With like so many of these topics that we cover, at the end of the day, it's like they kind of come and go and nobody ever really figures out what the deal is. How about like the early release of the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court? Did they ever figure out who did that? Who leaked the release of that being overturned? Did they ever figure that out? Did we ever? I mean, we know that the police can put that together, but it seems like that person should be the poster child of, not a good person. If your job is within the Supreme Court to, work with the justices, and then you go ahead and leak it. It's like, okay, but we never heard about that. We never hear about that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, things just move on and we don't really know. An assassination attempt on a former president and a probable future president? Yeah, we're going to get some information, but maybe they set this kid up to do this. Who knows? And the fact that he has zero social media and basically zero history of going down these kinds of roads. Be one thing if you had some kid that was just an absolute nut job. Everybody knew that he was just a whack job. That to me would make more sense. But this kid, doesn't have much of a footprint. And that's when I start to think on purpose to someone. All right. That's what I'm going to leave you with here, but I just wanted to touch on a bunch of these topics, and here we are. I mean, what a weird time to be alive, right? I mean, it's just like, what's happening? Trump got winged in the ear, almost had his head taken off. 20-year-old kid with limited experience did it. And like, we're living in the down under, people. Living in the down under. All right. That's it for me. I hope you guys have a great Tuesday, and I will see you on the next stream. Thanks so much for being here. We'll talk soon. Bye for now.